Close to 3 decades of freedom. On this day, 29 years ago, South Africans participated in their first democratic elections. Today, South Africa faces new challenges, including economic freedom and the dignity that comes with it. We speak now to the President of General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mametlwe Sebei. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Freedom Day to you. What did you make of the President's address this afternoon?
Well, I mean, obviously, it is the same, celebrations from the point of view of the elite. For the ANC, of course, this presents an occasion for them to remind, and in a way that obviously blackmail us into continue to support their disastrous governance of this country, which has scandalously led to many people begin even to question whether is this democracy better than the apartheid regime, a very vile system of repression from which the black working class rose in revolt and ended in 1994.
A lot of what President Ramaphosa spoke to today was some of so-called achievements that he highlighted, saying that, which is something that we've heard previously, a repetition essentially of, for instance, the social support grant, around 18 million poor and vulnerable on that social grant, really giving us an overview of what has happened over the past 29 years when it comes to the economic status of the country and the opportunities that have perhaps been missed. What's your take on that?
Honestly, we are, the people who disagree with those that, even begin to compare favorably apartheid to the end of it, to democracy, to black majority rule. We do think that an end of apartheid brought about fundamental changes in the lives of the black working class, in particular, the end of the racial and police terror that it entailed, the land dispossessions, the colonial conquest, the evictions, the arbitrary detentions, all of that. And of course, it was unavoidable that also a government coming on the basis of black majority vote has to concede certain things, including the basic grant that he's talking about. The reality, however, is the conditions of the black working class majority, and including increasingly, of course, of even the white working class that was privileged by apartheid, has become so worse that today people are feeling that the situation is much more worse. And what does it mean? It means that in a context where about 11.2 million people are unemployed, half of the population is living in poverty. About 5 million people are without houses, right? Living in informal settlements. Many young people, 75% of them, including millions who are not in education, not in employment, not in any form of training, meaning they are idling our townships, our streets, and many of them behind the violence, the violent crimes that we are seeing, that amongst others have led to horrific, mass killings, but also some of the instances that really suggest a descent into barbarism in this country. All of these conditions are an indictment on the ANC, an indictment on its neoliberal policies, are of course a reminder of the betrayal that the ANC committed at CODESA when it negotiated that the commanding health of the economy, the means to end all of these miseries, would remain in the hands of the privileged few that owns the economy, and the economic ownership that is monopolized by big corporations that control the lives of the working class people. They control who gets to be employed, and how many, and for how long, where, and so on. They get to control who gets to eat, what we eat, and in any way, in many ways, the feeling that basically we are still living under a white domination, it emanates from that for many working class people who have absolutely no control over our lives, but more than that, the conditions of the working class are worse. The cost of living crisis, the cost, the massive unemployment, the homelessness, lack of access to education, water, electricity, all of this suggests that this democracy is not delivering, and all of this is because of the betrayals of the ANC.
Some have said that it feels like a slap in the face, especially for the black working class. What role have they played in the past leading up to today?
Well, let's be clear about it. It was the black working class through its powerful mass organizations, the trade unions, on the industrial plane, but also organizations in communities, the civics, the youth movements on campuses that mounted resistance, which rendered this, country ungovernable for, an apartheid regime. And this, majority of the working class people were, of course, moved by the need to end, the tyranny of the white minority rule, the racism, the terror that came with it, the evictions, and the whole colonial oppression that it entailed. But more than that, they wanted, a better life for all. They wanted houses. They wanted water, electricity. They wanted doors of learning to be open. And in this respect, when the ANC agreed that the economy would remain with those that owned it under apartheid, they betrayed the struggles, they betrayed the aspirations of the people who carried the struggle, who lifted the ANC to power, because already in the 80s, the vast majority of the black working class had understood that the tyranny of apartheid was linked with a system of exploitation, particularly of cheap black migrant labor, that ensured a poverty wages, that ensured a high levels of unemployment, that ensured basically lack of services in black working class areas. And for that reason, that is the reason that, they concluded that it is not just about ending a political repression, but with it, a system of economic exploitation. That is the reason when you look at the slogan, the biggest slogan on the biggest banner at the launch of COSATU, it said socialism means freedom. It's because they understood without the economic power, this will be the feeling of the majority who will not be able to deliver on the most basic aspirations and expectations of the people. And this is a reason that today people are asking, is it worse than it was under apartheid?
And of course, taking from that, we know that the president also spoke about how freedom cannot be meaningful when South African homes and businesses are without electricity for several hours a day. And critics have spoken to some of the glaring parts of that sentence, saying that when it comes to accountability, the ANC has not spoken much about its role that has led to what the crisis that South Africans are facing today when it comes to electricity.
Yes, I mean, the fact that today, we are facing mass unemployment, and part of it is obviously the fact that capital that they rely on through, their strategy to attract a foreign direct investment is not investing. And of course, they're not investing because of, poor returns, on investment that I've raised in earlier discussions around issues of productivity. And that is to do with also the fact that the ANC itself has not invested in the infrastructure, right? And that has to do with the gross mismanagement, the incompetence, but also the looting and the plunder of these state-owned entities, but also public service. That by last year, the public operations investment in infrastructure declined by 83%. The public service spending on infrastructure also declined by about 40%, because all of these entities are insolvent. They are bankrupt after many years of looting. And this is the reason that experts are saying we are headed in 2030 to a situation wherein the infrastructure backlog will be 4.3 trillion. What does that mean? It means the current situation of relentless blackouts, of water outages, of potholes on our roads, of shortages of classrooms, of collapsing healthcare and all of that would appear to be paradise compared to a nightmare that awaits the working class majority as the situation worsens, unless we take ANC out of power.
Yeah, and what do you think this is perhaps painting ahead of elections in 2024?
The ANC has to go. I think we've got to be very clear about that. The question that we need to be asked is, what is the alternative? Of course, we do not believe that any of those bourgeois parliamentary opposition are an alternative to the ANC, because all of them rest on the very same system. They believe in the private ownership of the economy, and that is that in a final analysis is the main cause of this crisis. There is ANC corruption, there is ANC incompetence, there is ANC management, but all important as those are secondary. The reality is the crisis of unemployment, of cost of living, all of that are because of the concentration and monopolization of the economy by the few profiteering corporations that are not creating jobs, that are actually, are increasing, prices of basics, as even the Competition Commission pointed out, in order to profiteer at the expense of ordinary working class people. And as long as all of those opposition agree on that, there is not going to be a fundamental change. What do we need? We need the working class, the trade unions, community civics, youth movements, climate justice movements, all the movements of the working class fighting in all the main theaters of working class struggle in this country to come together to fight and agree on a strategy for resistance, but more than that, a political strategy to say, how then do we contest power? How do we take power out of the ANC and its bourgeois oppositions? And that means also having a strategy for the coming elections. And SAFTU has said we need a mass political party of the working class in this country. And that is what we need. And we would argue that party has to have a strategy, not only for taking a political power, but also for bringing economic power through a nationalizations of the mines, of the banks, of the factories, under a democratic control and management of the working class to ensure that economy works in the interest of all, and we use the wealth in the economy to build houses, to create jobs, and of course, to resolve all the fundamental challenges faced by the working class majority in this country.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Let's leave it there for now. President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mametlwe Sebei.